Remember when every Saturday morning felt like a tournament? Pokemon had you throwing imaginary Pokeballs everywhere, and Dragon Ball made you attempt a Super Saiyan transformation at least once a day. And somewhere between those two giants were the other contenders, the ones who had all the heart, all the merch, and none of the marketing. And I mean none of the marketing. You ever think to imagine an entire anime? Like you'll be talking to someone about childhood anime and go, remember Medabots? And they just stare at you like you just asked about the 5th Ninja Turtle Jose. Or worse, you say Zoids and they think you sneezed. Medabots and Zoids. Two series that, if you grew up outside of the US, probably still live rent-free in your heart. But if you grew up in the US, you might only vaguely remember as those robot things that aired before Yu-Gi-Oh! You go to anyone south of the US border and just mention Medabots and somebody in the room will scream, "Time to battle," before they even know what's going on. Those were the days. It was the era of digital battles. The late 90s and early 2000s were a strange, glorious time. Every kid's show was either about catching, training, or battling something. You had monsters, digital monsters, car monsters, and for a brief moment, robot monsters, with personality and an ethics lesson tangled up in the story. Anime wasn't content, it was a religion. And right in the middle of this giant energy dome of hype and sugar was a little pocket of kids who discovered two shows that didn't just entertain, they imprinted on us. Both Medabots and Zoids dropped right in that gold rush and immediately got buried by it. Medabots, kid buys a robot, upgrades parts, wins fights, learns morals. Zoids, people pilot animal-shaped war machines and yell dramatic things about honor while explosions go off in the desert. They weren't just shows, they were entire worlds. And yet, unlike their mega famous cousins, they didn't explode into lasting mainstream culture. They were perfect, but somehow nobody talks about them anymore. Why? Let's start with Medabots, the underdog of underdogs. Medabots had everything it needed to be huge. A catchy intro song that could wake the dead. The protagonist, Ikki, was basically Ash Ketchum if Ash had financial problems and anxiety. A protagonist with the chaotic energy of a kid who's been high on Capri Sun and existential dread. And of course, robots with personalities. Metabee was basically what would happen if R2-D2 grew arms and the emotional wrench of Vegeta. Metabee talked trash like it was his job. He was a gremlin with pistols. And that's why we loved him. Medabots wasn't slick or polished, it was messy. In the most human way. There was friendship, teamwork, betrayal, weird robot ghosts. The show was charm incarnate. In theory, Medabots should have been unstoppable. Robots, customization, personality, comedy. The idea was brilliant. A world where every kid owned a battle robot powered by a metal containing an AI soul. Basically Pokemon if Pikachu could swap out his head for a missile launcher. So why didn't it blow up in the US? Because everything around it didn't. The video games barely made it west, the toys arrived months after the show had aired. There's never, you gotta catch them all that Pokemon had. You got like 2 games on Game Boy Advance and they were good, but they were whisper released. The toys, they existed, but depending on where you live, they were invisible, late, or at the dollar store next to knockoff Power Rangers. While Pokemon had a full marketing army, Medabots had pamphlets. Add to that a localization that sometimes cut out entire episodes and simplified dialogue, and you get a show that looked like a phenomenon but didn't have the infrastructure to survive past its first hype.
Fox Kids, take the ride!
Fox Kids loved anime in the same way I love sweets, chaotically and with poor decision making. Story arcs that needed pacing, gone. Reruns, rarely. The moment Fox Kids die, Medabots evaporated like Thanos snapped them out of existence. It was a show about relationships disguised as a toy commercial, in a country where toy commercials disguised as shows were winning. Meanwhile, outside of the US, it got consistent reruns, killer dubbing, and a cultural memory boost that never faded. I'm serious, just ask anyone from outside of the US about Medabots and they'll hum the opening on cue.
Oh, Mr. Tunahead, I really liked you.
Ikki, get in there. Catch her on the rebound.
What?
Zoids was the mecha that couldn't. If Medabots was about friendship and robot sass, Zoids was pure spectacle, a nature documentary mixed with a sports anime and a teaspoon of war dramas. It was humans inside robot animals made to fight in desert arenas, with opera music and emotional rival monologues. The shield Liger is still one of the coolest designs ever animated. Blue, sleek, vibrant. It screamed louder than your mom did last night. The problem was, Zoids was technically a toy line first and anime second. The kits were gorgeous, detailed, motorized models, and that was kind of the issue. They weren't toys you could drop in the playground. They were toys your dad had to assemble for you with a screwdriver and a couple of beers while swearing at you because you were a mistake. Anyways, Zoids were too good, and that was bad. Zoids weren't action figures, they weren't plushies, they were model kits. Beautiful little engineering dreams, and also completely impractical for the average kid who was still learning how to butter toast. You had to build them. This wasn't a toy, it was a trade school starter kit. Compare that to Pokemon's Squeeze Pikachu and his Quicks. It's not a fair fight. Zoids sold intricate mecha you break before episode 3, while Pokemon sold plushies and cards you could trade, and the anime didn't help its identity crisis. Continuity in Zoids was like the McRib, seasonal and mysterious. Each new series, Chaotic Century, New Century Zero, changed tone, aired on a different network. Kids didn't know if it was a sequel or an alternate timeline. Still, Zoids gave us something magical, a kind of Gundam meets Saturday morning cartoon energy that hit the sweet spot for those of us too young for Evangelion but too old for Beyblade. In Latin America, they re-aired the shows for years. Kids watched whole arcs, dubs took risks, merch stuck around longer. But in the US, if something didn't immediately become a billion-dollar juggernaut, Nectars abandoned it. But again, we loved them because they were ours. They weren't polished corporate juggernauts. They felt experimental, weird, personal. They were stories about building instead of buying, strategy instead of brute force, companionship with machines before AI became creepy. And honestly, they taught a generation of kids to love robots, way before people started asking ChatGPT to marry them. But yes, they were both doomed from arrival. Both Medabots and Zoids suffer from what you might call the second wave curse. They arrived after the animated invasion had already crowned its kings. Pokemon had the marketing, Dragon Ball had the legacy, Yu-Gi-Oh had the cards. Medabots and Zoids, they had soul, but not synergy. Their toys didn't align with what kids wanted, stupid ass kids. Their shows were often aired out of orders or canceled mid-run. Their games were half localized, if at all. And their fandoms, scattered across borders, never got the unified push needed to make them last. They thrive in Latin America and Asia, but only because the dub teams took them seriously, because the reruns never stopped, because even after the marketing died, the story stuck. But they still left behind something special. Looking back now, these shows feel almost poetic. They were about customization and identity, about kids learning to build something unique and fight with it, not just collect it. That's a very early 2000s metaphor. The idea that you could take pieces from the world and assemble your own identity, your own power. Today, they're basically ghost franchises, remembered only by fans who still hum the opening songs in the shower, or still have a dusty Liger kit on the shelf somewhere. But it shouldn't be like that. We need that again. Not just because of childhood nostalgia, but because stories about compassionate technology are more relevant than ever in the world we live in today. Because maybe if kids grew up with anime like this, they would know there is value in tightening a screw instead of tossing the whole thing out. They would know sometimes the thing that's old or dusty or a little broken isn't useless. It's waiting for someone who cares enough to fix it. And yeah, it's easier to hit buy now than to take something apart and give it life again. But there's a kind of pride, a kind of quiet magic in seeing something work because you made it work. We didn't watch robots fight. We watched kids take pieces, tools, patience, and heart and turn them into something worth fighting alongside. And maybe the world could use a little more of that. Less replacing, more repairing, less upgrading, more understanding, less new is always better, and more look what I built, look what I saved. Because Medabots and Zoids weren't just about winning battles, they were about believing anything can become something special if you give it attention, imagination, and time. And maybe we need that more than ever, not just for our robots, but in ourselves too.
Premiering Monday, November 5th at 5. Join BitCloud and Liger Zero in their quest to be the best.
Payback time!
You spy coward!
How can it be so fast?
Area scanned. Battlefield set up. Ready? Fight!
Hey, if you ever find an old Metabot or Zoid in a box somewhere, give it one last battle for me.
Zoids, Monday, November 5th at 5. What are you made for?